author, Sarah England. Sarah, welcome to Belfast 89 FM.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to talk about your latest novel, Father of Lies. It sounds, in all of the reviews that I've read, it sounds like quite a chillingly frightening novel. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
It is, yes. A lot of people have said they have had to sleep with their lights on afterwards, so I think that's a result. But it isn't just horror for horror's sake. It's got some messages within it. It stems partly from my work in psychiatry, and also a strong interest in the occult, but mostly from having met a lady who has what's now known as dissociative identity disorder. It used to be called multiple personality.
That's right.
And it's now known that 90% of that is due to an abusive childhood. And this lady had a seriously fragmented personality, and so it partly stems from that. So we start with a very, very violently traumatized girl in an asylum, and after she's committed or attempted murder on someone, no one knows. It was in a desolate mining village or ex-mining village in South Yorkshire. Nobody knew her. Nobody said they'd ever seen her before, and it's a complete mystery. And after 2 years, she's getting more and more violent. So the psychiatrist, an Irish doctor called Dr. McGowan, decides, against his colleagues' wishes, to hypnotise her, because hypnosis is shown to be quite beneficial with uncovering deep trauma.
And uncovering memories and things like that. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
And it has been well documented, and he uses it with a tiny, tiny dose of LSD, which did used to happen. I don't know if it still does.
I don't think it happens anymore, but yeah, I think they used to use a lot of, I suppose, psychedelic drugs in the treatment of mental health conditions back then.
I think yes, that did happen,
Yeah.
and I think false memory syndrome came out of it, and all sorts of things. But what happens when he hypnotizes her, and it's against the wishes of his colleagues, largely because there's a very similar case in a nearby hospital with a boy who was from the same area as this young woman with exactly the same presentation. And against his colleagues' wishes, he hypnotizes her, and the results of that are absolutely horrific. So from that point on, all the medical staff, who are mostly atheist, humanists, as most medical staff, not all of them by any means, but a lot of them are, they are completely taken unaware. And they try to sort of dig down to what happened in this village, and of course it's all locked down and nobody's talking, and that's where we get little bits, we get fragments of what happened to her through her own recollections, but of course she's got a fragmented personality, and she's also clairvoyant, and that's where the spookiness comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's so many elements of it, I think, that lend itself to that fear factor. I mean, set in the moors in northern England, quite, as you say, desolate areas, and particularly old mining communities, there's that sense of life ebbing away as well, isn't there?
There is, and where it had once been a sort of thriving colliery village with all the men in work, it's now kind of very, very desolate. And the sequel that I'm writing goes much, much further back into that, to the mining accidents, and to also the area that has drawn gypsy travellers into the area, and that's kind of where we're going with it. So it's got a history, but ultimately it's not what you expect. The evil is not where you expect it to be. It's actually not from the ordinary people. It's actually for people in power, but that's where we're going now with it.
Okay, interesting. So Tanner's Dell, I believe, is the sequel.
Yep.
And you're working on that at the moment?
I'm working on that at the moment, so we're going much, much darker and much, much deeper with this one. So hopefully it will give people what they want. It will give them, the horror and the thrill, but also there's a detective element to it, and I've brought a lot of other things. And there'll be some people who won't, of course, like the clash of maybe religious beliefs in it, but of course that's always been controversial, so that's there too.
And I suppose it sounds like you're really exploring as well that conflict between, science and the supernatural, and how, a modern scientific mind might might try and understand those things.
Exactly, yes. I mean, I think there are people who very firmly believe that there is something other than just us, but they don't know what it is. But there's nothing in science to conflict that there isn't. So, the more that scientists find out about, for example, not just 9 or 11 parallel universes, but maybe thousands, maybe millions, we don't know. They're learning all the time.
That's
so there's
right.
nothing to actually contradict the existence of the supernatural, but of course some people will absolutely out and out say that there isn't. But then those who believe, who've experienced it, it can be a terrifying thing. I think it's fear of the unknown.
Absolutely. And are you from the Northern England area then? Is growing up there, was that part of what inspired your, using that as a backdrop and as a scene?
Yeah, well, I'm from Sheffield, and I lived sort of slightly, just into the Peak District, sort of as an adult. But as a medical rep, I was a medical rep for years. I worked all over sort of South Yorkshire and Yorkshire, so Doncaster areas, the Barnsley areas, the little mining villages where I used to go and see the GPs. So I've got a feel for those places. I've kind of created a fictitious area where we've got the bleak Derbyshire moors, and that's where the asylum, the fictitious asylum is. And also a desolate mining village, which I've got kind of somewhere around the Doncaster workshop area. I sort of love painting the picture of a pit wheel silhouetted on the moors, where there've been mining accidents, and there's a very bleak village with a kind of dark atmosphere to it, and not many people talking or coming out of their houses, and they're obviously keeping a secret, and there's a desolate caravan park that nobody seems to use, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I've got a feel for the area and also how they speak.
Yeah, I suppose the great thing as an author is you can take all of those aspects of particular areas that you love the most or resonate with the most, and just throw them all together and make this scene yourself.
Yeah, exactly, and you can see it in your mind. And I've actually got a little map on my wall of all the where the pub is and what the names of the roads and the woods and how it all slots together. So yeah, you can really paint something in your imagination and hopefully in the reader. And I don't think there've been many books in that area. I think I kind of like the Bronte feel to things, but I don't think there've been many books situated in that kind of area with that kind of background. So that's what I wanted to do as well.
And you've written over 160 short stories and serials which have been published in national magazines and newspapers. That sounds like a lot of writing. Is there a lot of work that goes behind it? How much of your time does it take up, Sarah?
Well, yes, a lot. It was over a period of about eight years or so. It took a long time to get the first story accepted. I hadn't really done anything professionally before, and I thought, it looks easy that you can write short stories for magazines. It's actually so hard.
Is that right?
To get it into 1,000 words or 2,000 words, and to have something that grabs people and is absolutely right for those readers. So it took about 18 months before I had my first acceptance, and that was for My Weekly, ages ago, probably 10 years ago. And after that, it was just really hard work. It was trying to learn the craft and the art of short story writing and editing tightly so that every word counts. And pleasing those particular readers for that particular magazine. So it did take a lot of focus and hard work. And it wasn't always what I particularly wanted to write, because I was always drawn to thrillers and supernatural and things that were much darker than what your average magazine reader wants to write.
Right,
so
yeah.
I did those as well and got those into competitions and anthologies. And then I was asked to write a serial because, based on a very long story I'd done for Women's Weekly about a hilltop murder in the North Staffs area, which really did happen. And it was in the deep snow, and she loved the atmosphere of it and said, have a go at a serial. And I thought, there's no way I can do that, but I actually have done those as well. And the next one is out in April in My Weekly, which is a kind of thriller, a mystery thriller.
You've also got 3 a.m. and Wide Awake, a collection of 25 tales from the dark side. As if one frightening story wasn't enough, you wanted to give people 25 to leave their hearts racing. Does that just speak to your general love and passion for that genre of writing and storytelling?
It does, and it's the sort of thing I look for as well. I kind of look for things that are going to tell me something different or put a different slant on life, based around a character rather than a clever plot. So they're usually character-based. But those are mostly stories that have been pre-published somewhere, so tend not to have been in the mainstream, although some of them have. But they tend to be the darker ones that weren't quite suitable for mainstream women's magazines. So one of them, the title story, the demonic title story, is actually the prologue to Father of Lies. The rest of them are kind of just from the darker side of life. So I did some research on Ouija board use and things like that, and witchcraft, and also a tale about some people who have kind of had strange illnesses and other people's reactions to them. So yeah, just stories from the darker side, really.
Fantastic. And, I think we can learn so much about, ourselves and human beings and human nature by looking at those aspects of ourselves, that sort of shadow side that we're not too, kind of know is there, but don't really want to face all the time.
Yes, exactly. And it is exploring that, and it's actually, I think most people will, me included, for most of my life, we just go around our do our daily jobs and chores and things we have to do and things we like to do, and we don't always think about any other level. Perhaps in the older days people had paid more attention to their spiritual side or to their religious side, but I think these days we perhaps don't. So perhaps we're on a another level, we're looking for that, or we're looking for some answers, like kind of what's the point of everything, or if something creeps upon us that's a little bit on the dark side and we start to question ourselves and think a little bit more, it's challenging to us, and I think we all need that, and we need a spiritual dimension of some kind, maybe.
And what first inspired you to pick up the pen and start writing? You talked about your working life before, but you became an author, was in the medical field and nursing. So what prompted the big change?
Well, really, I grew up reading avidly. My mother was an English teacher, and I always used to read her novels, and we discussed them, and I was good at English at school. I got O-level at 14, and so I always did like that. I wasn't really suitable to go into nursing, but it was kind of at 18, what am I going to, what are we going to do with it? So I went into it, I made the best of it, and I did quite like some aspects of the medical world, but it wasn't really me. It was really getting to the age where I had the chance. I got to the age 40. At age 40, I got the chance to try and do it. So I've been an avid reader for as long as I can remember. Probably I was reading novels at age 8 and 9, so I'd always loved the written word. So it was just a question of, I really have got an urge to want, I felt compelled to want to do it. And the more I did it, the more I realised that I could do it, and I could get into people's heads, and I could create fiction in my head and enjoy it, and people enjoyed reading it, so it went on from there.
And what about the publishing process? How difficult was that, taking it from, I have this piece of work, I have this piece of writing, and I want somebody to buy it, I want somebody to publish it?
Getting published is really hard. Once I got into the magazine world, they start to know your name and read your things and want to hear from you, and if it's right, they'll take it. Getting that one stage up to novels was really difficult. I found it was a pretty much closed shop to someone like me. But I did have 3am with a small publisher, and I did have a comedy novel with a small publisher. And but then things have changed so radically in publishing. It's unbelievable how quickly they've changed, and it's now possible. We've formed a group called Authors Reach with your co-host Katrona and Shani Struthers, who you've had on, and Gina and Richard. We've formed a group, and we're doing it ourselves. So it's been incredibly hard. I literally had to learn how to edit, format, print, publish, advertise, promote. It's really, really hard and very time consuming, and so it's like having 10 plates spinning. You would just love just to be a writer, but you can't really.
Well, I suppose it speaks to that labour of love. If you're willing to go to those lengths, then you really need to have that passion behind it.
You do, and it's absolutely, there are easier ways to earn money. It would be better to work in Tesco's money-wise, but it is a labour of love, you're right. And the good thing is that you're very in touch with readers this way. I've had so many people say how much they've enjoyed it and get in touch with me personally. It's been an absolute joy.
So tell us, where can people find out about, or where can people buy your books, Sarah?
Okay, well, at the moment on Amazon, it's with Amazon Select, which means it's in the library to read as well. So it's on Amazon to download, and there's a paperback too. At the moment, we're in the process of getting all of our books, that's Authors Reach, we're getting all of our books into the shops, and it's been printed, and it's been registered today, and it should be available in the shops within the next couple of weeks to just go in and ask for it.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like a great read.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All the best now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.